Every NRL team has a rival, but some of them just stand out from the rest, with the importance and power these rivalries hold even through generations. And today, we're looking at the best of them, so let's dive right into it. Number 10. The Broncos versus the Cowboys. This rivalry hasn't wavered much over the years, and the 2015 Grand Final definitely propelled this rivalry into the spotlight. It was a close match, with the Cowboys winning by 1 point, 17-16. This incredibly close finish created a lot of tension in the rivalry, with many fans considering this to be among the greatest Grand Finals of all time, with the skill levels of both teams being so close. Number 9. The Dragons versus the Roosters. These teams have developed a great rivalry over Anzac Day matches in the past, and it's not stopping anytime soon. Statistically, the teams aren't equal. Out of the 26 times the teams have met, the Dragons have won 16 games and the Roosters 9. The Dragons seem to be slowing down and struggling for points, which resulted in the Roosters pulling a few more wins this season, and who knows how it's going to turn out. Number 8. The Cowboys versus the Sharks. This rivalry hasn't been around too long, but that doesn't mean it doesn't deserve the spot. It started with the Sharks winning an elimination final against the Cowboys in 2013, with North Queensland stating that the Sharks obstructed a try unfairly. The following year, the Cowboys came back from a 13-point difference to beat the Sharks by a single point. Ever since that fateful match, there's been a strong rivalry between both teams, which I doubt will fizzle out anytime soon. Number 7. The Knights versus the Sea Eagles. This rivalry was kindled in 1997 at the Grand Final, and both teams have been relatively equal in previous ladders, but recently a gap has emerged, with the Sea Eagles being 4 places behind the Knights. Mark Carroll and Paul Harrigan really pushed the rivalry between the two teams, with a friendly but competitive rivalry between these two players specifically. These games still attract crowds and often get fans riled up around matches. Number 6. The Dragons versus the Rabbitohs. This rivalry started in a Grand Final as well, but way before the others in 1965, when the Dragons beat the Rabbitohs by a very slim margin. These two teams are relatively good and have had some pretty big encounters, like the Charity Shield event. This rivalry definitely peaked around the 70s when the Rabbitohs defeated the Dragons in a fantastic Grand Final, but there are still some tensions between teams even today, so this rivalry is definitely one for the history books. Number 5. The Sharks versus the Dragons. The Dragons have made it onto this list 3 times so far, but this is the last entry for them. This rivalry began around 1977 with 2 Grand Finals around that time, where the Dragons were definitely on top. A lot of spectators were rooting for the Sharks, but this rivalry cooled down a bit until 1999 when the Sharks hit a big win against the Dragons, when some controversy was sparked by the Sharks CEO, but that didn't stop the Sharks from meeting their rival in the preliminary final with St. George, winning, but the rivalry hasn't slowed, so there's definitely more to come. Number 4. The Storm versus the Sea Eagles. This rivalry started in 2005 and ended up being one of the most intense rivalries. They started off with a fair bit of tension as they were both very successful around the early 2000s. Both teams met in the 2007 and 2008 Grand Final, and then the rivalry definitely peaked in 2011 when Melbourne won a match which was coined the Battle of Brookvale. During the match, a brawl broke out between Adam Blair and Glenn Stewart, and it took a while to be broken up. This rivalry has cooled down a bit, but games still attract many fans from both sides. Number 3. The Bulldogs versus the Eels. This rivalry was definitely one of the biggest rivalries for a while when it started in the 80s, with both teams competing for premierships, which sparked a rivalry which is still strong today. Some of the best matches which added fuel to the rivalry were the 1984 and 1986 Grand Finals, with the Bulldogs winning 6-4 in 1984 and the Eels winning 4-2 in 1986. Both these teams are very successful, and these two teams have had one of the most passionate rivalries, with a 2009 preliminary final victory from Parramatta keeping it ablaze. Number 2. The Panthers versus the Eels. Both teams often meet to play for the crown of the western regions of Sydney, and these often attract massive crowds with game attendances of over 20,000. Both teams are often winning over the other by tiny margins because of the teams being almost equal in strength. This rivalry goes back over 50 years, and the dedication from fans was on full display when these teams met in the 2022 Grand Final. Also, if you're enjoying the video so far, then subscribe to see more NRL content like this, and with that, we're on to number 1, the Roosters versus the Rabbitohs. This rivalry is the oldest on the list, starting in 1908 in the first ever New South Wales Grand Final. These two teams have always had a very passionate rivalry, with both representing the area they are from and the dominant financial class best they can. Both teams have played over 2,200 matches and met 248 times, with the Rabbitohs winning only a few more games than the Roosters. And that's it. Leave a comment of what you thought of the list, and I hope to see you again next time.